I have been kicked out from YG several times. Anti-China sentiment in Japan became stronger, differently by Hong Kong protests.
Hello! Today we have a very special episode with Daichi, who is a PhD student here at CUHK, and he's also from Japan. He's writing about Hong Kong for some famous Japanese media. So we are just going to have a casual talk. I've collected some questions that people wanted to ask him, and let's see how it goes. Do you want to introduce yourself, maybe in Cantonese?
No, I'm Dai, so I'm a PhD student in Japanese studies and anthropology at CUHK. And what I'm studying is Japanese diaspora in Hong Kong, but I'm quite interested in various kinds of things of what happens in Hong Kong these days. Sometimes I'm asked by Japanese media to cover about Hong Kong, then I research about them, or I sometimes interview people here. Hope I can exchange opinions with Carol and you guys today.
And also, you're going to write a book, right?
Yeah.
So probably we're going to talk about that in the end of the video. Let's start with some questions. Firstly, obviously people are very curious about what Japanese people think about the movie.
I can say Japanese people are quite interested in Hong Kong issues comparing with other international issues. Usually Japanese people are not interested in what's happening outside Japan. Hong Kong people are quite interested in global issues. Because it's a global city and people go to other countries easily. But in Japan, Hong Kong and China is somewhere far from where they live. I thought they would not be interested, but nowadays many media covers that, so many people are interested more.
So why do you think they are? Just Hong Kong and China as well?
Well, there are many reasons. So first, discourse about China is quite popular in Japan these days. Because China's power is bigger these days. Some people think it's threat to Japanese power. Also, there are other reasons. So also it's relatively easier to cover for Japanese reporters, including freelancers. There are quite many prizes. Also, Hong Kong has freedom of press compared with mainland China.
How about Zhao Ting?
Many Japanese media regard Zhao Ting as a leader of the protest. His appearance is quite good, and Japanese people like that kind of idol girl. So I can say she contributes to making Japanese general public interested in Hong Kong issues.
So somebody are saying that it's actually 等于省 first and democracy second.
I don't think so. They often connect with the context of anti-China movement. So maybe some people support her and Hong Kong, not because of democracy maybe, but simply because they are against China. Yeah.
Okay, another question is actually about the protest culture and political culture in Japan. Do people participate in democracy movements at all?
Okay, so after students' movement in 1960s, it was a kind of taboo for students to have the protests. So there are not so many protests like Hong Kong. But maybe the notable protest these days is 311. Some people gather to be against nuclear power plants, but it doesn't continue so much. It's not so successful, and comparing with the protest size of Hong Kong, it's quite small.
How about Japanese people who care about Hong Kong issues? Are they part of this group of people?
Those who are against nuclear plants is usually liberal people, but Hong Kong is quite different because many kinds of political ideas can support Hong Kong protests easily. For liberal people, they can say they want to protect universal value of democracy and human rights. Then they can support Hong Kong. For conservative nationalistic people, they can support Hong Kong because that movement is anti-China. Of course, some people are against Hong Kong protests, but usually on media, I see only the discourse that supports Hong Kong protest side usually. There are some discourse that criticize violent protesters, but it's very small, yeah.
There's another question, how about Japanese companies? Do they politically censor their employees in general?
Generally speaking, it's regarded as improper action to talk about politics in the company.
Okay, but outside of the company you can talk.
Well, you can do, but maybe your boss can criticize you. Right, yeah. It's more sensitive now. they work for the same company for whole life. So they have to have the identity as a member of company stronger than Hong Kong.
So even like their personality.
Yeah, right. I mean, even in their private life, they are required to work. They are required to behave as a member of the company. Yeah.
And that hasn't been changing. Like even for young people now, it's still the case.
It's changing, but it's still the case.
Yeah. So the original question is even more specific. It's about like because a lot of Japanese companies they have business in China. Do you think that's an issue too?
It really depends on what kind of Japanese companies you talk about. Because some Japanese companies are kicked out after Xi Jinping became stronger. For example, internet business. Even though they don't say it clearly, some of them hate China because they know China. They do business in China, right?
How about the other side, like pro-China Japanese companies?
In my view, Japanese companies try to be less political, because they start the business in China already, right? So they have employees and the factories, facilities there, right? So they cannot stop their business easily. So they have to consider so much before saying political opinion. They have the identity as a Hong Kong.
Yeah? I think a lot of them. I'm actually quite curious.
Also, some Japanese people grew up here, so they still consider as a native speaker. Also, it's quite special. For example, if you live in China, can you say, I'm Chinese and Japanese at the same time? I think you can say. Even if you can speak Mandarin, foreigners are always foreigners. Many reasons, but systematically it is quite clear. What foreigners can do if mainland is quite limited. Like for example, even to open the bank account is quite difficult these days. And also, mainland is different from Hong Kong in that we cannot join the politics in mainland. Okay, sorry, I should say even mainland people don't join the politics. But in Hong Kong, if we have Hong Kong resident ID card and grew up here, and you can say, I'm Hong Kong.
Yeah, and people would be really happy.
Japanese is one of the biggest minority who can speak Cantonese.
Japanese children in Hong Kong, they usually go to international schools or local schools.
Depends. Very depends, but those who come here just to stay for short time usually go to Japanese school because we go back to Japan. So they want to continue Japanese system.
Also, there's Japanese schools.
Yeah, Japanese school here is based on Japanese system, so they don't want to go out from Japanese educational system.
But this group of students, do they also identify as Hong Kongers?
No, I don't think so, because they use Japanese in the both of their parents are usually Japanese, and their parents work for Japanese company. Nowadays it's more diverse, because not only expatriate, some people stay here for a long time. In 2000s, Japanese people live in Hong Kong and they go to Guangdong every week to see the factory. Because at that time, especially Shenzhen, it's not a good place to live for families.
So the factories are there.
Yeah, there. This is many Japanese families start to live in Shenzhen because there are international schools and Japanese schools. We often use this word, kanan wana. Japanese people in manufacturing industry often see Hong Kong and Guangdong is a kind of one area. Yeah.
How do you think Japanese people in Hong Kong perceive the emergency of escaping?
It really depends on what kind of people you talk, but at least Japanese businessmen.
And most Japanese people in Hong Kong are Japanese businessmen.
Well, right. I mean, but there are many Japanese husbands and wives who get married with Hong Kongers or Hong Kong permanent residents. So I cannot say generally, but those who have done business in Guangdong province before 6, Hong Kong is important because they can access the Chinese market easily. As far as Hong Kong is freer than China, Japanese businessmen still choose Hong Kong. But some people choose Hong Kong because of other reasons. For example, freedom of speech or maybe, fair system of the law. Those people may escape from Hong Kong. They just worry because of Japanese media talk so much.
Somebody asked, how useful do you think is the international battle that a lot of people are trying to do? Like we're making a lot of monsoon like promotional materials in Japanese and trying to spread them in Japan, do you think it actually reach people?
So for manju, yes, there are many manju in Japanese, right? And those manju are spread on Twitter. In Japanese, Twitter is quite popular. It's successful much more than other protests in other countries. I think it's because Hong Kong has many Japanese speakers. And they know Japan because they have been to Japan, or maybe they have worked or studied in Japan before. So I think Hong Kong protesters have really good strategies to change the mind of Japanese people.
And also in Japan, when foreign people, they speak fluent Japanese, do you have the feeling, oh, they speak Japanese? So
Maybe that's right. So
because in Hong Kong, we are really happy when people speak Cantonese.
That's why Dalton is quite popular because she speaks quite fluent Japanese. She can appear on Japanese media by herself, right? That word can make influence on Japanese society and even politicians these days.
And do you think the whole Hong Kong thing is making any impact on the general development of democracy in Japan too?
There are some discourse that Japanese people should protect democracy because Hong Kong people cannot protect anymore. But I don't think it doesn't have any direct influence on Japanese democracy. But I can say anti-China sentiment in Japan became stronger differently by Hong Kong protests. Because the scene of Hong Kong police action is broadcasted on Japanese media many times, and that's quite impressive. And people think that's what central government do
in China.
Then
Okay, so finally, do you want to talk about your book project?
I'm currently launching the project about a book which describes small stories of Hong Kong in Japanese. So Japanese people always talk about Hong Kong in big context, but we should also focus on individual life and emotion of Hong Kong people. So I want to focus on small subjects.
That's also a very anthropological perspective, right?
That's right. I'm currently recruiting new authors. If you are interested in writing your own experience and emotion toward the protest, please contact me by email.
I'll put your email in the caption.
Thank you so
So
much.
if you're interested, just send him an email. Or if you have any more questions for him.
I always welcome any kind of question.